Hey guys, it is Neb, and today I have 11 secret tips for Crait which you guys can use to get more kills, more points, and also to assist you in completing objectives and winning games. Some of these tips you may already know, but I feel like a lot of these are very rarely used, so I do want to get them out there. So without further ado, let's get into the 11 secret tips for Crait. The first 3 tips involve the ski speeders for the resistance. Now, the first one is probably the most obvious one, but I feel like newer players might not actually know this. So, the ski speeders can actually get you thousands and thousands of points if you shoot the walkers. So when using a ski speeder, make sure to look out for when the walkers are vulnerable, and make sure to use your L1 and R1 ability to use maximum firepower on those walkers, and you can get over 5,000 points just in one strafe alone. Using this, you can easily get a hero in the first 1 or 2 minutes of a match, and I've found this a really effective way of getting heroes really quickly to help out my team and to get big kill streaks. The second tip I have involving the speeders actually involves the cover that you can use with them. So using the red trails of, I think it's salt or dust, whatever it is, you can actually use these red trails to cover yourself, which means you're going to take less damage. So what I like to do is go around in circles or do like sort of serpentine movements with like a snake. And what this does is it forms sort of like a blanket around you where the enemies can't actually get a direct line of sight on you. Enemies can still see a red dot above you, but you are much harder to hit this way. Also, on a side note, make sure to use a scrambler to avoid the ion torpedoes and the ion turrets that could harass you when playing as a speeder. This is the right ability on the ski speeders, so make sure to use that one to shake off anything locking onto you. The last tip for the ski speeders is that they can also provide really good support to teammates by taking out ATSTs, especially from the back. If you circle around behind them and hit them in the weak spot, you can kill ATSTs very quickly, and this is extremely useful for your team because it means that they don't have to deal with them. Also, if you strafe the trenches where the First Order often group up, you'll get a lot of kills by killing the snipers who often snipe from those positions. If you're playing on the First Order and the ski speeders are annoying you, well, here's a tip for you guys. There are a few ways you can take out the ski speeders quite quickly, and these include by sniping them, especially with Disruptor Shot on the NT-242. You can also use ion turrets and torpedoes, but my favourite way personally is to use the TIE fighters. TIE fighters are very, very effective on Crait, and this is because the resistance don't get fighters to counter them. So using TIE fighters, you can lock onto ski speeders with your torpedoes, as well as hitting them with your primary blaster and strafing enemies on the ground. So when using TIE fighters, you can slow down to slower speed and get behind a speeder, and as you guys will see in the footage, I destroy one here pretty quickly with my primary blasters, and I've also got footage of me locking onto these ski speeders, so make sure to try that out when using the TIE fighters as the First Order. And you can actually see the enemies holding the ion disruptors from the sky, so obviously it has the icon above them. So if you're in a TIE fighter and you see people about to hit the objectives, make sure to strafe those areas first and take out the people who are going to hurt your walkers. Now back to more tips for the resistance. So, a very little known tip is that the dome-shaped anti-aircraft cannons at the back near the trenches can actually be operated by players. So they show up as blue dots on the radar. Do keep in mind that the bigger artillery cannons cannot be operated despite also showing up on the radar. Only the smaller dome-shaped ones can be operated by players. Now these can be used in a couple of ways. First, they can be used to shoot down TIE fighters in the sky, and this is really effective when TIE fighters are often strafing the trenches or your teammates in that surrounding area. If you get a few shots on them, it's usually enough to scare the TIE fighter away and break off their strafe run. The other way to use these anti-aircraft cannons is to use them as an alternative to the ski speeders in order to rack up heaps of points. So you can actually use these to hit the AT-M6 walkers. When the walkers get close enough, these cannons can do hefty amounts of damage and get the player a lot of points. If all the ski speeders are taken, I like to use this tactic to get me some really quick battle points, which I can then use later on in the fight.
Well done. That ATM-6's defenses are down. Use everything we got.
Also, a smaller tip about these cannons is that when a player is in one of these, the out of bounds counter actually does not affect them. So if you're out of bounds and it says like a 30-second countdown or something, if you hop into one of these cannons, it actually won't affect you anymore, and you can stay in that as long as you want until the next phase. So that means that until the next phase, the player can stay inside the cannon and use it to shoot the walkers even when the battle continues past them. In terms of ground combat, anyone who actually is not sniping might find a little bit of difficulty getting close to enemies to take them out, because there are so many snipers on Crait and it's sort of hard to run across the open to kill enemies. So a really good strategy that I use is to peek your head through a crack to see where the enemies are, because you can usually see the little red dots above their heads. And then once you see where they are, you can actually run underground towards them and flank them. This works really well, as most of the time the enemies actually will not expect it, and they'll be sitting just on the edge of the ramps looking over the surface and trying to snipe people. As you can see in this footage, I'm running with the heavy class and using this strategy very effectively. I think I go on like a 15 kill streak or something, just running underground and flanking these people who are looking over the surface. ATSTs are also very powerful on Crait, and these can be used to get thousands of battle points for players. When playing as an ATST, if you take out a ski speeder or a speeder runs into you, you can actually gain about 1,000 points. And if you do this a couple of times in one life, you've already made the battle points back that you spent on the ATST initially. Also, it's very hard for enemies to take you out on Crait, and this is because there is no cover for them to use. So no one can come out and sort of get high ground on you or shoot you or get a flank. They all have to pop their heads out to shoot at you. And this means that you can charge forward and shoot all the enemies poking out of the holes in the ground. Also, ATSTs are very easily stackable and can be used repetitively until the last phase. So if you use them non-stop until the last phase, you can actually save upwards of 20,000 battle points, which you can then use on heroes and reinforcements.
We have an ally on site, a special operative. Capture squad, secure the hangar.
For the resistance, a good way to counter these ATSTs, especially on the second phase, is to run the heavy class with the ion turret and the ion torpedo, as well as the supercharged sentry. So in the second phase, I like to move along the edge of the map and get a flank. Now this is effective because not only does it shoot ATSTs coming into the cave, but it also harasses them when they are shooting their teammates on the point. Especially if you run on the edges of the map, not many enemies really run those ways. So for most of the time, there is very little or no resistance. No pun intended. I tried this strategy for one game, and I took out about 10 ATSTs just on my own, using the ion torpedo first to weaken them, and then using the supercharged sentry to hit them in the back where the weak spot is. Also, the ion turret will just hit them by itself, so you didn't really have to worry about it. You can just chuck that one down looking across the open entrance, and it'll do all the work after that. Not only does this help your team out bucket loads by keeping ATSTs off the control point, but it's also really effective at racking up a lot of battle points in a short amount of time. Here's some footage of me taking out an ATST on full health, all on my very own, just using this setup. One more tip that I have for the Resistance is actually to use Leia for the first and the second phases of the map. And this is because she can use her secondary fire, so basically this locks onto enemies all the way across the entire map. Now this one is pretty obvious, I feel like a lot of people know this, but you can either run all the way back into the entrance of the cave, all the way on the other side of the map where the enemies can barely even see you, or you can run into the trenches and hide, use the cover there, or you can just use your shield and poke your arm out. But overall, just using Leia on this phase is really good because you can get quick kills and take out a lot of enemies without the danger of getting blasted by those ATM-6 walkers. So if you get a really quick hero, I'd definitely suggest trying out Leia on the first and second phases of Crait because you can just hit them and there's no cover for them to avoid. So you can just spray out and hit heaps of enemies when they can't really do much back to you. Now the last tip that I have involves destroying the objectives at the end when you're playing as the First Order. So if you can capture the platform on the right side, right in front of the doors, there's a really nice secret spot you can sit in, which allows you to get free shots of the objective without enemies being able to see you or shoot at you. As you guys will be able to see in the footage, using this spot I can fire my supercharged sentry through the two windows here, doing about a third of the generator's health on my very own without the other team even being able to see me or shoot at me. So using this tactic, you can come through extremely clutch for your team, and this can often mean the difference between losing and winning the game. So there we have it, that was 11 secret tips for Crait. Let me know if you guys have any more tips that I could share. Like the video if you enjoyed it, like the video if you learned anything new. Let me know if you guys want to see any more of these tutorials or secret tip guides. I've been potentially thinking about doing one for every map, but it just depends on what you guys think of this video and how many tips I can come up with on each map. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I'm going to bounce and I'll see you all in the next video.